This is the Raising Rebellion podcast, episode number 22.
Welcome to the Raising Rebellion Parenting Podcast, where we will explore how to help kids seek purpose and passion, challenge society's expectations, and avoid a standardized life. Now here's your host, Paul H.K.
Hello, Rebels. Thank you so much for being here. Today is one of those stories that infuriates me, and at the same time, inspires me, because thank God it has a happy ending. It's the story of a man who, as a child, didn't connect with what or how things were being taught in his school, and he rebelled pretty hard as a result. Finally, in the 9th grade, he was told by his high school counselor to drop out of school and go start working because he failed over and over again. That experience eventually led him to find his purpose later in life, which was to make sure other kids didn't have that same school experience that he did. Today, he's now a TED Ed Innovator Educator. He's an Apple Distinguished Educator, and he recently won Teacher of the Year for his district. This man's name is Anthony Johnson. If you're a parent, I think you're gonna love his approach to teaching. And if you agree with me after hearing his story, please send this episode to any teachers you know, because I think they'd love to hear it as well. This man is an innovator in full service to kids and an amazing human. So without further ado, here now is my interview with Anthony Johnson. With me today is educator, innovator, teacher of the year, and the creator of Johnsonville, Mr. Anthony Johnson. Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for being here on the podcast today.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Really my pleasure. Okay, I always ask everybody to start at the beginning and tell the audience a little bit about your history. So if you wouldn't mind, could you tell me a little bit about your childhood, growing up, and your journey, a quick summary of your journey of how you got to where you are today?
Okay. I was one of those students that I didn't like school, didn't like anything about school. Mm-hmm. And because of, me being not engaged in the classroom, I acted out. Mm-hmm. And acting out caused me to fail 4th grade. And I had to repeat the 4th grade and started acting out again when I got to middle school and did the same thing. And I failed 7th grade, but because I was already held back a year, mm-hmm. I was moved on to the 8th grade. Mm-hmm. And I did the same thing in 8th grade and failed, and because I was getting taller, they moved me on to high school, and I did the same thing in high school and failed 9th grade. And then in my 2nd year of 9th grade, got called to the office one day, and the school counselor had called my dad and told him to come and pick me up, and that I was wasting my time, and it was time for me to make a change, and I needed to get a GED and learn a trade, and that was the end of my career as a student. I went in, got a GED, mm-hmm. and growing up in New Orleans with just a GED, I struggled. Mm-hmm. Struggled for 10 years, working minimum wage jobs and mm-hmm. living from check to check. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until 1998, in June of 98, my mom died, mm-hmm. and I had just moved to North Carolina, and I was depressed, mm-hmm. and just kind of looking, for a direction in my life. And I just moved here and didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And just when I started to kind of get out of the funk, 6 months later, my dad died. And then I really became depressed. Wow. And just kind of, hated the world at that time. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot of soul searching, mm-hmm. and reflecting on my life, like, where did I go wrong? And it was when I was in the 4th grade. So I decided to make a change in my life and go back and try to just have a purpose in my life, to make sure that a kid didn't, experience the same hurt and that same feeling that I was feeling at that time. Mm-hmm. And that's when I kind of found my purpose, and that was to become a teacher.
Right.
but not necessarily a classroom teacher. I wanted to be a band director. I said I was going to make a change using, through music.
Yeah.
But when I enrolled in college, a funny thing happened was, I went to Livingstone College, a private college here in Salisbury.
Mm-hmm.
It required 10 hours of community service. And they actually sent me to the school that I'm working in right now. And when I got to the school to do my community service, I noticed, I was like, man, nothing has changed. It was 1999, and it looked the same way it did in 1979.
Wow.
And the thing was going on was, you had kids who looked like me, was able to sit to the back of the classroom, and the teacher just let them sleep. As long as they didn't disrupt the class, she let them sleep.
Wow.
And I knew, and I saw myself, and that just kind of took me back, and I was like, man, these kids are going to have it rough when they become a man, and they're going to struggle. And I know the struggles. And that's when I changed my major from music to elementary education with the thought of me really, really making a difference. And, the rest is history. I became a teacher. And I decided when I become a teacher that my classroom was going to look as, the complete opposite of the environment that I was in. And that's why I call it Johnsonville, because I want it to be different from the other classrooms. When you walk in, you're in my world, and it's not a world with desks, and it's not a world with me standing up, lecturing to you for 3 or 4 hours a day. It's an interactive city, and it's, you're going to learn some life lessons while you're in my classroom.
Man, that's incredible. That's incredible. I want to get to Johnsonville. I want to talk about Johnsonville a whole lot, but I have a couple of questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
So, the 4th grade, right? You were acting out. Do you have any? I mean, you say you did some soul searching. Do you have any thoughts as to why you were acting out, in 4th grade, but then again repeatedly in 9th grade and on?
Well, because I guess I make this joke, like my teachers didn't know if I had ADD or ADHD or if I was just BAD, because I have to do stuff with my hands, and I'm a visual learner. Yeah. And, even like today, I can't just sit and for a long period of time. I got to be up doing something. And that's, the kind of environment I was in. Just sitting, and the teacher give you an assignment, you write in your book and you write, and that was it. And nothing was like hands-on. Yeah. And I couldn't do it. It drove me nuts. Right. So.
Right. I hear, I interviewed a couple of other people who felt exactly the same way, a couple of millennials, who, same thing, right? They just couldn't sit still, but they were labeled the bad kid. And
right.
When the counselor asked you to come in and said that you needed to go just learn a trade, go get a GED, stop wasting time in high school, was that? Do you feel like that was coming out of a place of like good? That's what they honestly thought that would be best for you, or do you feel like that they were just trying to remove you from the school because maybe you were more of a distraction than anything else?
To be honest with you, and I think about that all the time. What was the purpose of that decision? Right. And
because that's huge, right? Huge impact on your life. Yeah.
It did. It had a huge impact on my life. And I look at it like this. I was that kid. I was that kid that probably, if I had that same kid, I would have issues too. But I don't know, man. And that's something that, because I think about it all the time. I actually was trying to find an old yearbook or to find, who was the counselor during that time, because I wanted I don't remember his name. I want to meet him one day, and not necessarily confront him, but just see if he remembers me and what played into that decision. Yeah, because it did. It had a severe impact on my life. But I can't blame it all on him because I did my part too. Right. With the misbehaviors and the disrespect toward teachers. Right.
Right. I get it.
But,
Another one of my past guests, her name is Jan Black, and we were talking one time about how many times people who experience difficult challenges in life are the ones who actually have that drive to make a difference. Right.
yes.
And she had a pretty great observation. She said, "The gift of challenges actually gives opportunity for brilliance to jump forth," and it really feels like that you're a great example of that. So,
Right. Thank you.
Pretty fantastic. Yeah. I read that since your first year of teaching, you have used a project-based learning approach in your classroom as opposed to teaching to a test, right? Whether it be a standardized test or otherwise. Can you tell me why you feel project-based teaching and learning is more beneficial to students?
Because it's relevant. If a kid would understand why I'm teaching this concept and how it applies to real life, I think they're more engaged in it. And that's the whole thing. With Johnsonville, I just don't want to tell them you have to learn this just because the state of North Carolina says you have to. Mm-hmm. I try to give them that real world application with any concept that I'm teaching. So it's relevant, and they'll take it like more seriously.
Right.
They understand that what you're learning affects your life. It's not just because of you got to learn this because you're going to have a test at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. I'm concerned about the test, but it's not that it's not number one on, my job is to actually teach the kids. Mm-hmm. And I can care less about that. I know this sounds, awful to say, but, my focus is the students and not the tests. Yeah. It's the students and the experiences that I can give them.
Yep. You're talking to a guy who that does not sound awful to.
Yeah.
I probably the majority of people maybe do think that might be awful, but I actually don't, which is why I reached out to you. I to kind of go off of that, I also read a question that you had asked in something that you wrote, in a blog post you wrote, that I've been wondering myself for a long time. You asked, why is the culture to drill facts into students' heads just to pass a test? Uh-huh. So why do you think that is? Why do you think that is the culture in today's society?
Well, because if you think about it, if you're a teacher, mm-hmm. and you have those failing marks, I guess I don't know how many years, mm-hmm. You're going to be deemed a failure, and more than likely you're going to be out of a job. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why a lot of teachers would just kind of like drill it, and make sure that they memorize it. Yeah. And just kind of, I ain't gonna say, well, I'm trying to say this in a nice way. Just make sure that you're covering yourself. Right. And I'm just not believing that. Mm-hmm. My job is to teach the kids, teach the whole child. Mm-hmm. I'm not teaching for a test, mm-hmm. because, the test is going to change. Yeah.
Very true. Okay. So, for example, your students' test scores are consistently higher than the rest of the school and district. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So why do you think then, if you are example of that, right? It's proven now that your kids' mm-hmm. test scores are higher. Why do you think it's difficult for people and schools to change? Like, what change would you like to see in terms of teachers' approaches and in schools?
What change would I like to see? Mm-hmm. I can't speak for every school, right, in every school district, but I can tell you that under our superintendent, our leaders, they have really been pushing problem-based learning in our school district. And, like I said, I can't speak for it. I work in Rowan and Salisbury schools, mm-hmm. and it is our superintendent focus to really push problem-based learning. And we have been for the last, 3 or 4 years, mm-hmm. you've been seeing more and more schools moving to this model, and especially here in my school. First, I was the only one using defined STEM, the resource, and now it's the whole school is using it. And I would probably predict pretty soon a lot of teachers in our school district is going to be also using that resource, because it's a great resource. It's a great resource. It's like a one-stop shop for problem-based learning. It has everything that you need, all of the resources and the rubrics, and I think some teachers might find it difficult, because once you assigned it, then you move from that role of being a teacher to more of a facilitator, and that is a risk that I think a lot of teachers have that fear of doing. But I think if you try that one time, you'll see how much your kids love it and they're engaged, and they're going to really be into those lessons.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Okay, now I know you incorporate a lot of technology in your classroom,
yes.
right? When did you your school district all have iPads? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
K-8, yeah, we're iPads. We're a 1-to-1 district in K-8,
Okay.
and in the high schools, every kid has a MacBook Air.
Ooh, okay, wow, that's fantastic. Here in Los Angeles a few years ago, we had a very high profile, I don't know if you heard about it or read about it, but we had a very high profile, large scale, expensive failure to implement an iPad program, right, into LAUSD school system. Huge mess, led to the resignation of the superintendent at the time, whole night. What are your thoughts on how technology best coexists with education, inside the classroom?
Well, I am an advocate for technology, especially with the iPad devices. I've seen firsthand how technology has just transformed the learning environment of my students. I wish, we had a visual right now where you can see my classroom, what my kids have been doing with Hot Wheel cars and iPads and creating graphs, and they're very engaged with it. And that technology is the great equalizer. It levels the playing field, especially in our community. We have a lot of kids who live in poverty, but giving them that device, they have the same access to the kids who live in the upper income neighborhoods, and they have the same devices and the same resources. So it levels the playing field with kids who are less fortunate. And also with those devices, the bell rings at 3:30. My kids go home at 4:30, 5 o'clock. They're back online, and I'm still teaching. So I have access to my kids, way past, the 7.5 hours that they're here.
Wow.
And even on weekends also, my kids are collaborating. And we couldn't do that without our iPads. So I'm an advocate. I love the technology. I love the iPads in particular. And I don't know what I'd do right now without those iPads.
So it's just like the connectivity to your kids and to one another is really what it brings. And
the science textbook is constantly updated. And it's not like the printed book where it's already outdated once we get it. I have it's constant current information, and I love it.
Maybe you could come over and give a speech to LAUSD.
I would love to.
Okay.
Set it up, I'll be there.
Okay.
Free of charge.
That's right. Okay, let's talk about Johnsonville. I love your idea so much and your approach to your classroom. And, it sounds like it's now the ideas catching on and starting to spread, certainly within your school and maybe further out into the district. Tell me about Johnsonville. What is it and what do your kids do?
Okay, Johnsonville is a real-world simulation. It's for the whole entire year. The very first day of school, I give them a passport and I tell them, you're going to travel through this land of mine. I'm the mayor. And I set it up to where, I tell them, this is a land of learning. And once you step in it, if you come to my classroom and learn every day, you got a chance to earn $100 per day. Mm-hmm. If you don't, if you don't work, you will not get paid. Now, I have snacks, donuts, and, buy pizza and hot wings, and they're able to buy real items with the Johnsonville money that I give them. Mm. And some kids actually, they're able to take over and buy the businesses. I would sell the business, and then they would actually, if I brought in a dozen donuts, they would buy the inventory from me. And then they're allowed to sell it for whatever price they want to their classmates to make a profit. And then they have a business. Now, the cool thing about it, back with the iPads, they have to keep a spreadsheet of their income. They have to track the income. Mm-hmm. They also keep a database of their suppliers, which is me, and also how much money they spent, just to kind of, keep track of their finances. Mm-hmm. My classroom is set up where I have tables, bar stools, and I had a sofa area. Mm-hmm. And the kids, depending on where they sit, that's the rent changes. If they sit in the sofa area, it's like $2,000 a month. If they sit at the bar, it's $1,500, and if they sit at the tables, it's $500.
Wow.
So it all depends.
Right.
We write a classroom constitution the first or the second day of school. So those are the laws. Mm-hmm. And, we abide by those laws, throughout the whole year. Mm-hmm. If you break a law, then you have to pay taxes. And also...
Wait, you have to pay taxes only if you break a law? You don't have to pay taxes just... No, okay.
Yeah, and there's a flat tax, 10% on all income. So, whenever the shops are open and they sell, I take 10% of whatever they sell.
Okay, gotcha.
And sometimes I would kind of change the law, when I'm teaching social studies, and I become a dictator a little bit. And we have elections to where they can actually outvote me and become mayor. But me being a crooked dictator that I am, I always rig the election. Just to kind of give them that real world experience. It happens.
It certainly does. It certainly does.
Yeah. But, the whole thing is to teach that life lesson. If you work hard, you're going to be rewarded.
Right.
If you don't, hey, there's nothing for you. In Johnsonville, I don't give anything for free. Mm-hmm. I don't give them anything. Everything is earned. So, and I learned that lesson, with being a high school dropout. So, I tried to, give them that same lesson.
Right. That's fantastic. In the structure of a classroom and learning with real world applications inside of it. That's so awesome.
Yes.
Okay. Now, your students experience Johnsonville throughout an entire school year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, what kind of problems do they encounter throughout the year? Like, do you allow them to fail? How do you help them work through those kinds of issues, those kinds of problems?
Yes. It's always one or two kids who just want to test the system and try me or do something that they know they're not supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And then they learn that word called bankruptcy, where you have to file bankruptcy and lose everything.
Right.
And start completely over. Mm-hmm. And starting over is the hardest thing you can do in Johnsonville, because then you're playing catch up. Mm. But I'm the law, and I have to let them know. And it's always one or two kids throughout the year that somebody is going to file bankruptcy, and it happens. Mm-hmm. And hey, it is what it is. I've had kids at the other school that I taught at Overton when I was using the money, who actually, and believe this or not, took my money, went to the public library, and made counterfeit money.
Wow.
Yes. I had kids who should have had maybe $200 or $300, and one had $20,000, and the other one had $22,000. And I was like, I don't even have that much money circulating in this building right now. $22,000. And when I looked at the money, it was all counterfeit. And I was like, there's no way in the world. And I remember going to the principal and telling her, I was like, listen, this is what they did, and they need to be suspended. And I remember she saying, where did this happen? I said, down in my class. She said, okay, well, Johnsonville, do you guys have any laws for this? And I was like, no, I really need you, I'm going to write them up. I need you, to take care of it. She said, nope, this is your problem. I think you need to handle it down there. And I did. And those two kids filed bankruptcy. I took all of their money and told their parents what they did.
Wow. Did you give them any kind of points for thinking outside the box or no?
No, sir.
Okay.
I came down hard on them because actually, I think that year we had to go to an online system because everything was we had so much corruption with money that was just printed.
Wow. That's a great building block for you, right? I mean, you can incorporate that kind of theme. We certainly have lots of corruption inside of our financial system, right?
Yeah.
Boy, that's crazy. Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a minute. Okay.
Okay.
Do you think kids might need more room to just be kids at school? In other words, do you think they'd need to really learn and be exposed to these kinds of adult skills so early in life? Like, what would you say to somebody, a parent or another educator who might have that kind of viewpoint?
I would tell them that kids need this lesson right now. Mm-hmm. And the reason why, because I think if I had, this kind of simulation and knowing what's going to happen to me, it just would have changed everything. I would have went to middle school a totally different kid. Mm-hmm. I would have been striving, for college. I would have been just, knowing that once, I've reached adulthood, that, I can do anything. And yeah, I mean, you have to teach them now and say, let a kid be a kid. Mm-hmm. It's when their kids are when they're supposed to be learning the stuff. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't have to learn how to balance a checkbook or, to manage finances when I become an adult. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because then to me, I think it's too late. Yeah. So, yeah, I think if I'm an educator and my job is to teach, then I'm going to teach them. I'm going to teach that whole child. Mm-hmm. So, I have to. Right. I've not had a parent to complain yet about it. They love it. Right.
Now, you teach middle school, is that correct?
No. I teach 4th and 5th grade.
4th and 5th grade. Okay. Wow, that is early.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, when you first started this, did you have to sell your idea to your school administrators at all? Or I know you said that your district had already been talking about not at all.
Nope. When I told them what I was going to do, they loved it, and I didn't have any problems. The funny part was when I was in college, when I used to tell my professors all the stuff that I was going to be doing, and they would, make comments like, "Yeah, and you're going to be unemployed before the end of the school year." It's like, "Yeah, you can't do that." I was like, "Yes, I am. This is what I'm going to do." And I remember because, I was a 28-year-old freshman when I was in school, so I wasn't 18, 19 years old. So I would actually argue, back with my professors, like, this is how I'm going to run my class. Yeah, yeah. And they were, you're going to be unemployed before the end of the school year. Wow. And I haven't left yet.
Have you been in contact with any of your college professors?
Oh, yeah. Yes. And they love it. Very, very supportive.
That's great.
And it's just amazing now that I've been doing this for so many years, but now through social media, so many people are just kind of catching on and loving this idea.
Yeah. Now, So when you did first start, you had the support of your school behind you. Did you have any kind of pushback from parents at all, or kids when you first started doing it? Not at all.
No, sir, none at all. Parents loved it. They thought it was great. Yeah, and that's amazing. I guess it was just meant to happen because parents have been very, very supportive. And in fact, when I would open up shops, we call it, the shop day, the parents would actually donate stuff. It's like, so I didn't have to buy things. Parents would yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Parents would actually come in and assist on those days.
So what kinds of feedback have you gotten from your kids, from your peers, from your parents? What kinds of feedback have you?
Yeah, it's all been positive. I have kids, I can walk down the hall right now and have a first or second grader. And they know about Johnsonville. And I just laugh, like, how do you know? Because my cousin told me. And my mama said I'm going to be in your class. I'm like, okay, this is funny. And other parents, I ask, my child is coming up. I hope that, they're in your class. I love what you're doing. And, just people in the community, they support it too. Whenever I have a project or something and I put it on social media, it's just amazing, the feedback, people bring stuff in. I had if you look on my Twitter feed today, you'll see a picture of some ties that I needed for a project, and someone I don't even know just donated, some ties.
Wow.
I asked for, I was asked for like 40 ties and received probably about 500 ties in about a month and a half. So I cannot complain, man. This community, this city, these people have been very, very supportive. And even, my colleagues, they was like, Mr. Johnson, I'll try this. And, I'll share some of my money and they'll, create their own little system also.
That's incredible. Okay. So, projects all have an endpoint to them, right? So if your kids are in Johnsonville the entire year, at some point it unfortunately has to end for them, right? So how does your class, quote unquote, end for your students at the end of the year?
Okay. Toward the end of the quarter, of the last quarter, probably about 2 weeks before school lets out, in order for me to get my money back for the next school year, I'll start kind of piling up different gifts and different things that somebody has donated. And what I would do is at the end of the year, I have an auction. So that's when it just, this goes to the highest bidder. And it can be virtual reality goggles or old computer that was donated or anything in the class. The rest of the snacks are some of the animals. I have live animals and auctioned those off last year. A fish tank. Wow. And a bearded dragon. And it's like the whole setup. So if I have rockets left from a Forces in Motion unit, I just auction everything off and so I can let them kind of go at it. And it's a motivator to behave to the end of the school year too, because they know the auction is coming. And a lot of them kind of save their money so they can bid on those things.
Right. That's good. It teaches them to save, right? You're teaching them saving.
That's right.
Okay. So what kinds of, after your students leave, what kinds of skills or values do you think your students develop during the course of their time in Johnsonville? What are they taking away from your classroom when they leave?
Collaboration. Learn how to work in a group. One of the things when I became an Apple Distinguished Educator, one of the first exercises I did was to work with 60 or so other ADEs. And one thing that we had to do a collaborative project as soon as we got there. And one of the things I remember, folks from Apple were saying was that, you guys can collaborate, but you can't use the word but. You have to use the word and. And that's the biggest thing I get, I try to tell my students is, I need you all to work in groups, but don't be a but. Don't use the word but. I want you to use and. You cannot do it all by yourself. You have to work in groups. And you have to collaborate and share ideas. And it's not one person's project, it is the group's project. So, get feedback and get input from everybody, and it'll make your project a lot better.
That's fantastic. Okay. I know you've talked about some challenges that some of your peers have had when they have tried to go and replicate what you're doing in their classrooms, right? When they're trying to implement problem-based learning into their classrooms type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about what challenges you've seen there, in terms of your peers trying to do it?
Well, the biggest thing, and this is something that I'm a big advocate about, and I've been talking about, I'm fortunate enough to where I'm able to put money back into my classroom. There are so many teachers, and this is it's not fair. In our teaching profession, about 10 to 15% of my monthly income goes back to my classroom to keep this learning, engaging environment going.
Yeah.
And we are the only profession that are asked to put money back into our workplace. And a lot of times, teachers who want to do all of the stuff that I'm doing, they just don't have the financial resources to do it. And it's not fair.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that, I'm pushing is I hope that, because North Carolina, we're near the bottom right now in teacher pay. And, we get probably about, in our county, we get about $250 a year to spend back in our classroom. I spend that in a month. Yeah. Sometimes in a week.
Right.
And that's the biggest challenge is, when you want to do a lot of stuff. I wish you could see my classroom right now, and all of the foam board that's laid out, to simulate like New York City. It's in this classroom, and each one of those boards cost me $5 at Michael's.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many boards, probably 50 or 60 boards. And that doesn't include the extra stuff. And this is just one project. So imagine doing, this project-based learning, and you have to buy a PVC pipe. Like I did a video where I had a GoPro on when I went to Lowe's. And I didn't get half of what I needed, and it cost me $133.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm blessed and I'm fortunate enough to be in a situation where I can put that money back in my classroom, but a lot of my colleagues are not. And, we need to be, teachers need to be valued for what we're doing for society.
Yep.
And pay teachers more and give them the resources so, we're not spending money back. I don't see the McDonald's manager in the supermarket buying his meat that they're going to fry.
That's right.
Yep. But teachers are.
Yeah.
Go to any craft store on the weekend, or and it's teachers. Some nights I go, searching for stuff, and I have my name tag on. I see 10 other teachers in the store doing the same thing,
spending their own money.
Right, spending their own money.
Yeah. For
kids.
Yep.
This is crazy.
It is crazy, and the dedication of teachers, I just have the utmost respect for. It's, oh man. So upside down, but anyway, that's a whole nother topic. Okay, now I know your work in the classroom has led you to create a larger project called Johnsonville Learning Network. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about the Johnsonville Learning Network?
Okay, and I believe it was September. I was named the TED Ed Innovative Educator. A TED Innovative Educator.
Right. TED is in the conference, right? The TED conferences.
Yes,
right.
yes. And one of the things that I was able to do was to attend the TED weekend and was able to pitch a innovative project. And my project was to create a learning network to showcase what we're doing in the classroom. So if there are any teachers who want to create their own Johnsonville or they want to see PBLs at work, they can go to the Johnson Learningville Network and see step-by-step instructions on how to implement it into their classroom. And we're still young with it. I've missed so many days of school with conferences and presenting.
Yeah.
But our next episode is actually going to be coming out next Friday, so you can see how my rooms looks right now. We're actually shooting the next episode right now. But I just wanted to create a free resource, that teachers can go and they can learn, what I'm doing in the classroom and how to implement it into their own classroom.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. You just keep giving, Mr. Johnson.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So what kinds of things drives you these days? I know you're just expanding and you're creating these free resources. You're out giving talks and presentations to other schools. Before we started rolling, you told me, you were just booked to go out to Hawaii to do a couple presentations out there for schools. Tell me what you're up to these days, and tell me what's the favorite part about your job.
All right. Well, now what I'm doing is just trying to share more about what I'm doing, and also just to kind of share my story. It seemed like a lot of people, they get inspired by how I became a teacher and what I'm doing in my classroom, and they try to do those same things for their students. So if I can help any other student, of course I'm going to help. So that's why I love the traveling and the presenting and the sharing of ideas. So hopefully, they're not like some other Anthony Johnson sitting in the back of the classroom, not getting instruction and not getting engaged. And it's just been a maze. I found out that, and I forgot the name of the magazine. We're featured in one of the magazines in Germany. And I can't read the article because it's all in German, but it's just. But I found that out this morning, and I was like, "Wow, who would have ever thought?"
Yeah.
A high school dropout would be making an impact on education, not just in my building, but on the other side of the world,
around the world.
So and it to me, I see it as a responsibility now. And also with being named Regional Teacher of the Year and being a finalist for state, it's my responsibility to share and not just, keep the stuff in isolation and, keep it all to myself.
Yeah.
If other teachers are doing it, it's just going to make our world a lot better.
Yep. Fantastic. You're an incredible human being, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay. I know we're getting close to the hour mark, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you're very busy. I have one final question for you. On this podcast, I explore how parents can raise rebels, right? And basically what I mean by that is how we can help give kids perspective on what's possible outside of the status quo, right? Doing something different in order to help them seek more meaningful lives in their own lives. What kind of advice can you give to parents on how to raise successful rebels in life?
Okay. I got to think about this one here for a minute.
Okay.
What I would do is, and I've done this with some of my parents, when, they tell me, Mr. Johnson, they're like real engaged with, my child is like real engaged in your classroom. And I worry about next year, if they're not in Johnsonville, how are they going to, to do if the teacher's not doing this? And, what I tell them is, give your kids a platform. With the work that we're doing, the kids take so much pride in it because they know I'm going to tweet their work, I'm going to put it on YouTube or Vimeo or the Johnsonville Learning Network. So, find something that they love to do and do well and give them a platform to share it out, to the world. I have kids, my fifth graders have published 9 or 10 books this school year on iTunes. And when they found out that they were going to be publishing books, it took on a whole new, level of engagement and also creativity. So if you really want them to be successful, give them, have them to find something that they really love and give them a platform because, the kids, they love those likes in the replies when people say that, yeah, you did a good job on this. I love this, especially if the audience is not just, that one person, that teacher that they're turning that work into, but it's a worldwide audience. They really, really get motivated, and you see, the smiles and the accomplishments. My kids right now, they can go on iTunes and type in their name, not my name, their name, and to see their work coming up. And they love it, and they ask for more. Like, can we publish another book? Like, sure, I don't care.
Yeah, wow, that's super interesting. It's kind of taken on the the whole idea about social media being we get a physical reaction when we post something on social media, and people, we get a like, a thumbs up, or a heart or whatever. So as opposed to posting just something in your everyday life, hey, I'm at the grocery store, I'm buying new shoes or whatever. Instead, you're encouraging them to actually have the courage to put their work, their schoolwork out there, something that they created, and put that out onto social media. Yeah. Exactly. That's awesome.
Create your own learning network.
Create your own learning network, yeah. All right. Well, that's so I could easily talk to you for a heck of a lot longer, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But if people want to find you online, contact you, social media handles, where can people go online to do all that, to connect with you?
Twitter at @A_P_Johnson.
Okay.
Yep, and if you want to send me an email, it's anthonyjohnson@me.com. Mm-hmm. And I have two websites. I have the JohnsonvilleLearningNetwork.com. Mm-hmm. And I also have, this is my older site called TeachThisWay.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mr. Anthony Johnson, he's the mayor of Johnsonville. He's also an Apple Distinguished Educator. He is a TED Innovator Educator. He is Teacher of the Year for 2016-17. He's also up for Teacher of the Year for his state, for the state of North Carolina for this year. And he's a leader who is helping other educators rethink what's possible inside the classroom. Mr. Johnson, I'm so inspired by your leadership as a teacher, as an educator, just as a human being, what you do in terms of your approach with your students. Thank you so much for the work that you do. I can't thank you enough for chatting with me today and sharing your story. Thank you so much.
And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, absolutely. And let's please keep in touch. I'd love to stay up to date on what you're doing, and I'd love to help promote whatever it is you're working on to bring some awareness to the great work you do. So let's keep in touch.
Sure will. You got it.
Okay, Anthony, thank you again.
Thank you.
By sharing these stories, my hope is that it provides you with information and perhaps some motivation to help you with your family's journey to raise your kids to take ownership in their future and to be courageous in living the lives that they want to live. The show notes for today's episode are over at raisingrebellion.com. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd of course appreciate it if you help spread the word or left a review over at iTunes to help others find the show as well. Very grateful as always for you being here. And until next time, go Rebs.